Great. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here as a part of the Environmental Justice and Health Disparities Symposium for this session, Statewide Environmental Justice Commission Reportbacks from Maryland. I'm Rebecca Rehr. I'm the Director of Climate for Health at ecoAmerica, and I'm joined by Camille Burke, who's the Chair of the Maryland Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities, Ben Grumbles, the Secretary of the Environment for Maryland, Monica Brooks, the co-founder of Concerned Citizens Against Industrial CAFOs, and Devon Dodson, who's the Senior Energy Advisor at the Maryland Department of the Environment. Full disclosure, I'm also a graduate of University of Maryland School of Public Health under the tutelage of Dr. Wilson. So happy to be here for many years in a row, and also a former member of the commission. So really excited to be here for this panel to talk about what's going on with the commission and how you're working on environmental justice in Maryland and sort of bringing in some of the new federal policies as well. So I think just first of all, thank you to our speakers for being here. Thanks so much for all of the participants. I think we can take the slides down and get started with the conversation. This session I know is a little bit different than other sessions. We're going to do some history of the commission from our panel, and then we are going to actually have live Q&A from all of you who are participants. So definitely keep that chat going. You can send things directly to me if you want to ask. If you want to ask anonymously, or if you want to ask questions, you can type it into the chat and I will make sure we get those questions directed to the appropriate person on the panel. So I think we're starting off with just a background on the commission's history and current work. So panelists, can each of you provide a brief introduction of what agencies or communities you represent on the commission and your roles? So Camille, let's start with you.
Good morning. My name is Camille Burke. I actually represent Baltimore City. In my other life, my non-busy life, I actually am the director of the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program for the Baltimore City Health Department. So that keeps me a little busy, and serving on the commission was very much in line with not only the work I'm doing, but the passion that I have not only for children and environmental justice as well. I am heading into what I think, and Devon, please correct me, is my second term as a commissioner. We've had quite a bit, and we'll talk about this later, just quite a bit of growth and quite a bit of movement and quite a bit of change. Just like this past year of COVID and the pandemic kind of changed the way we live, the commission has been changed by that as well. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that. So, and we're going to talk about what those changes are and kind of what that looks like a little later. We're certainly looking to be a little more interactive. We have refocused with some help, not only from community members, but the legislators as well. Our commission is going to be expanding and certainly a little more inclusive. Monica is one of our newest additions, and we're looking forward to being a little more interactive with communities as well. And that's just the short version in the time that I have, because we'll get a little deeper a little later on.
Great, thanks so much, Camille. And Secretary Grumbles.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Grumbles. I'm Secretary of the Maryland Department of the Environment, and I'm honored to be part of this panel discussion and the symposium. I am also the chair of Governor Hogan's Chesapeake Bay Cabinet, and also am honored to chair the Statewide Commission on Climate Change, which also has a co-chair on climate justice. And the last part of my role in serving on the Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities Commission is to help be a liaison to what other states and what the federal government is doing. And through the Environmental Council of the States, I serve on the Environmental Justice Task Force, which meets with EPA and the new political leadership at EPA on a monthly basis. Thanks, Rebecca.
Great, thank you. And Monica.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. My name is Monica Brooks. I am the co-founder of Concerned Citizens Against Industrial CAFOs, and I reside on the eastern shore of Maryland, where we have a vibrant rural community. I also serve on a few boards for working with the environment, but I'm most excited about serving my community. I am newly appointed to this commission, so I don't have a wealth of knowledge. I will defer to my peers as necessary, but I am very encouraged by what's happening. Even the fact that I was appointed is such an awesome honor. And I believe that we're in a position to do some really amazing things to make a difference in our state.
Great, thanks, Monica. And Devon.
Good morning, I'm Devon Dodson. I'm the Senior Advisor for Secretary Grumbles at the Maryland Department of the Environment. Secretary Grumbles asked me to head up the environmental justice efforts inside and outside of the agency. I bring a few years of intergovernmental experience to the agency and to this effort. And my principal role is I'm the principal staff for the EJ Commission. Thanks, and happy to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll encourage folks as we get into the discussion, we'll get to your questions after some initial questions for the panel. So make sure you get those questions into the chat now so we can get to all of them or as many as time allows. So our next topic really is that the commission is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Sam.
I'd like to introduce myself.
Sure. You go ahead.
Is it appropriate?
It is. I think Salem was checking to see, I know you're not a scheduled speaker on this panel. So if there was another Zoom link that there perhaps you needed, I think she was gonna help you out with that.
I'm on the wrong panel.
I'm always happy to have your input, of course, but I know if you're scheduled on another panel.
Let me find, we're looking for transportation equity in Maryland.
That's a different, I think there's a different Zoom link.
Let me
I think,
find that.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think we just wanted to go into a little more history of the commission. The commission is 20 years old now. So it was actually the Maryland Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities was established by an executive order in 2001 by then Governor Glendening. And so Camille, as the commission's chair, can you just give an overview of what the last 20 years has looked like for the commission?
So because I am an incredibly young woman, there is no way I'm going to be able to give you the last 20 years. And I may defer to Devon and Secretary Grumbles on this. What I will do is take this opportunity to kind of give you a little bit of what our focus is and what our focus should have been and kind of where we're moving towards. We focus on examining environmental justice issues in sustainable communities. It is just that simple and not that simple at the same time. Our charge is to kind of analyze and review and develop the criteria for state laws that may have an environmental or will have an environmental impact as well. We recommend options on EJ issues to the governor and the General Assembly. We have and participate, as we did this last very unique session, have robust conversations well into the night about laws that certain legislators have proposed. And we kind of reach out to those communities and also kind of help to be very realistic about enacting laws, to be perfectly honest, with no money behind it and how we're actually going to implement some of this. And we have very frank conversations about that. We are lucky enough to sit at MDE because there are quite a few other things going on at MDE. I myself sit on the lead commission, which meets early and often if you've been to a lead commission meeting. We also have a sister commission, as I call it, the Children's Environmental Health and Protection Advisory Council as well. And we cross meet with them. Both Devon and I sit on that commission as well. Climate change sits, as Secretary Grumbles said, at MDE as well. So we meet with them. One of the things that we also do, which I enjoy, is that we also connect often with the Office of Health, Minority Health and Health Disparities. And we are also lucky enough to have direct connection to the Maryland Department of Health because all of these issues intersect, as you well know. We've expanded to 23 members. We were much smaller than that a year or so ago, but we had a law change. And the members, and let me also take this as a shameless plug for those who are interested in joining us, please reach out to Devon or myself. If it's something that you're interested, we would love to have you join up and kind of walk you through the process as well, because we're always looking for members. We want to also mention that serving on the commissions are voluntary and certainly take a commitment and time. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Our meetings are the fourth Tuesday of every month, and we're currently virtual. We've met 7 out of 8 times, and that's kind of where we are. And I certainly will defer to Devon or Secretary Grumbles to kind of fill in what I missed.
Madam Chair, this is Ben Grumbles, and I think you did a great job. And like you, I'm young as well.
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
So
Yeah.
Very important history of the commission. And the most important point is that the commission is much more robust and is getting top level attention as a priority in the state of Maryland, and the commission serves as a critically important advisory body. That's a very important point, and that we can do our jobs better if we continue to get more public involvement, engagement from citizens who have problems and recommended solutions that we can recommend as a commission to policymakers throughout the state.
Yeah, and the commission has actually, like Camille said, definitely weighed in on policy and gives a report to the governor every year. But it's the other thing is that you mentioned several different departments have representation on the commission, and that's a really important role that the commission plays, is that cross-cutting. Yes, the Maryland Department of the Environment staffs it, but there's actually representation from a number of different departments, because as Camille said, environmental justice is such a cross-cutting issue. It's critical to have perspectives from across disciplines, and it's critical that environmental justice, regulation and law get implemented across agencies as well. And that's something the commission does well, is to make sure that there is representation from many different departments at the table and in the implementation process of the issues you're considering. And lead is a great example. That's actually what got me interested in environmental justice in the first place, is going to school in Baltimore City and having lead in the pipes, was the issue that introduced environmental justice to me. And so I think that's, a great example of all the different ways that departments are involved. And so I wanted to continue with, MDE and the role that the department plays in environmental justice in the state of Maryland, and just wondering if you could share some details on the Maryland Department of the Environmental Justice Plan. What have been some of the challenges and successes of MDE in addressing environmental justice issues in the state of Maryland over the past decade? And what are the current gaps that need to be filled? So Secretary Grumbles, let's start with you.
Thank you. And to state the obvious, a plan is only as good as its implementation. But on a very positive front, I want to say that while we have a tremendous amount of work to do, work ahead of us, I'm very proud of the fact that the department, sensing the real need for a roadmap, a plan for us internally as we implement our air laws, clean air laws, our poison prevention laws, our clean and safe water laws, our hazardous waste and brownfields remediation laws. We needed a real direction and focus. So the plan, which was finalized at the end of last year, essentially creates an internal working group so that the most senior leaders within the Department of the Environment are focusing in on the right questions, how to target our enforcement in areas that need enforcement and accountability, how to figure out cumulative impacts when new facilities are being proposed or when expired permits are coming up for renewal and modernization, how to, with great focus, increase our outreach and listening skills to communities on what the challenges are for the underserved and overburdened. So that's a very important start. that we have on this internal working group. We also have, I have advisors who are not senior managers, but who are very focused on how to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice within the department, within the government, in terms of hiring and training and advancement of careers to bring more people of color, more diversity and inclusiveness in what our state environmental agency looks like. And we definitely have gaps and we have challenges. I'm very encouraged in working not just with other state agencies, the 5 other state agencies that are part of the commission that Camille chairs, but through the cabinet, the administration, and the new federal administration. Tremendous opportunities to learn from and provide state input on what Justice 40 means and how we invest the benefits from federal dollars and the benefits from state dollars to areas that are in need and disadvantaged. More data, more monitoring, hyperlocal monitoring of air quality, and more listening and getting out into the neighborhoods and listening rather than telling or preaching as to what we're doing. But we have a lot of important work ahead.
Great, thank you. And Devon.
Well, it's always hard to follow my secretary, but let me say this because he wouldn't have said this. This is the drive of this came directly from Ben. This was his idea, his desire, his focus at the intersection of events that happened in 2019 and into 2020. And the first thing he did was name me as the environmental justice officer. And I started receiving all of the requests, phone calls, emails on issues of justice throughout not only agency, but throughout state government. And it's the implementation plan, as he spoke to, that really sets the stage for internal and external activities for MDE and others going forward on equity and justice. And let me clarify that a little bit by telling you what the vision was that he gave to me. And the vision was we're going to do a 3-pronged approach. The first is working with Camille, having the robust commission that you just heard about. The second was the internal work group and the implementation plan that Ben spoke about. And the third was me as the environmental justice officer, reaching outside of the agency, hearing from the public, and being the ombudsman and having those concerns come directly to me. And then I'm able to touch each individual in the administrations who have an effect on whatever the issue is and get resolution, or at least an understanding of what the issue is from the ground level. And that's probably the most important thing that we were able to accomplish quickly, the ability to have the communities actually communicate with me and say, hey, I've got X problem in Y community. Is it a justice issue? Maybe, maybe not, but irrespective of whether it's a justice issue, let me take a look at it and see how we can help solve the problem.
And is this the first time? I know there have been dedicated staff at the Department of the Environment for many years on environmental justice and across, departments in the agency. But is this the first time that a full-time environmental justice staffer has been designated, or has that happened in the past?
So I would be lying to you if I were saying that this was my entire full-time day job. But yes, I think this is, in my memory, this is the first time that we have appointed an environmental justice officer in any agency, as far as I know, in state government. Yeah,
it's a very senior official. Devon is very senior. He's been around in different state agencies for years and helped lead different departments. So this is I think for me, it's the first time I'm aware of that a department has established such a senior officer who's dedicated to being the ombud. But he needs staff, he needs people to work with. And so my air, water, land, and materials directors, administrators coordinate closely with him to follow up on, site inspections or having different meetings. And my goal is to help ensure that the Maryland Department of the Environment is a model for other state agencies who look to stand up EJ policies and implementation plans and designate EJ officers who are within the office of the secretary and have cross-cutting responsibilities and multimedia missions.
Yeah, that's great. And that's exactly where I was going. It seems very replicable, and that other state agencies, this gauntlet thrown, nothing wrong with a little friendly competition among state departments of the environment. And so the challenge is out there for other departments of the environment to have very senior environmental justice roles. So I think that's a good model to follow. And Monica, I wanted to ask you, as a newer member of the commission, when I was on the commission, I was representing the health perspective, but I'm also from Baltimore. I'm an urban environmentalist. I have a Baltimore-centric perspective, not just in Maryland, but the world. And so I just wanted to ask you about sort of the need for that geographic diversity on the commission and how sort of the urban rural issues are talked about on the commission.
Oh. Yes, thank you. Honestly, this has been a great encouragement to have our representation from our rural community. Sometimes we in the rural community, we kind of feel like we're an afterthought. Not necessarily because we are, but because maybe we don't have the largest voices. We don't have enough access to representation. I have both perspectives as I grew up in the city, but I live in a rural community. So it's very important to be able to not paint environmental justice with the same brush. We all have a diverse amount of issues and concerns. Although we're all wanting clean air, everyone wants clean water, and of course we want healthy land, but we have different ways that needs to be accomplished, and we have different sources of said pollution and said issues and problems. So I think it's really great to have our rural perspective to be able to show that it's not just all, happy-go-lucky, farmers markets and, oh, look, there's a cow. But we also have concerns as it relates to an abundance of some air quality issues that are related to some of our agricultural things and other matters. And so just like anyone else, we want to be able to breathe in deep and to know that what we're breathing is healthy and safe. And our commission is actually going to be coming down here. Well, they're here already, but they're coming to observe some of what we have going on the Eastern Shore. So, it's a great opportunity to give voice to our rural community members so that we can come alongside with our urban counterparts.
And I would imagine, Zoom Zoom's a lot, but I imagine having the virtual option to have the meetings actually does make input easier.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. That definitely expands opportunities for people to participate who might not necessarily easily be able to go across the bridge any old time or, during, certain times of day. So virtual has been a great benefit to, I think, to everyone. And in a way, it's sometimes, of course, we all kind of go, oh, another virtual meeting. But at the same time, it's expanded our opportunities to connect on a level that we've not been able to, and even in a larger capacity with other agencies, with other coalitions. We're in a prime position to really get some good things done.
Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to go into, there's just a question that came into the chat that relates to the next question that we were going to talk to about the commission's current top priorities. And in the 2020 annual report, the commission included an action plan for 2021, and the plan outlined 4 major areas: prioritizing the identification of EJ communities, supporting enhanced public engagement and participation, empowering state agencies to invest in long-term EJ strategies, and the 4th, enhance the membership and authority of the commission. And I know we've touched on each of those, but sort of explicitly in 2021, how can each of you speak to the tangible ways in which the commission has advanced these initiatives each year? And Secretary Grumbles, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. So one of the priorities for our effort has been to raise the profile of the commission, a meeting with legislators, and I can say our environmental justice officer, Devon Dodson, has spent a lot of time working with the Senate on their recommendations for environmental justice and the House of Delegates. And with Camille as the chair, it's great to have both a diverse and talented commission that's well run. And so emphasizing the importance of this forum. One of the other ones that I feel like in 2021, we have taken some very important steps as a regulatory agency at MDE, following up on the priority by building in criteria for our enforcement team. We have, we are bound to follow the law as it's written in federal and state, but we have certain amounts of enforcement discretion. And so we have a matrix that can help calculate when identifying priorities for enforcement of air, water, waste provisions. So we now have a criterion that really, focuses in on, is this a disadvantaged community? Is it already enduring pollution from other sources? And that helps prioritize site inspections and enforcement actions. And also in renewing permits permits for facilities that come up for renewal after 5 years or so. Through the Climate Change Commission and the focus on prioritizing environmental justice, it gives us a sense of, okay, if there's a permit that needs to be updated and modernized, put it at the top of the list or higher in the list for the scientific and legal review if it involves a disadvantaged community that is already overburdened or underserved. So we're making some real progress in 2021. And internal discussions on how you develop cumulative impacts analysis and longer term strategies, which is very important. The commission helps reinforce our commitment to implementing the declaration from the governor and the other 5 governors and the EPA and the mayor of DC from a year ago yesterday, to really focus on restoration from the inside out to increase diversity and environmental justice. So we're making progress, but we have much more to do and work with the legislature as well.
Wonderful, thanks. And Camille, your status update on those four big priority areas.
We have a lot going on. Unlike other years, one of the great things, and there are many great things going on this year, is our engagement with our legislators. We have 2 amazing legislators in Delegate Regina Boyce and Senator Obi Patterson, who, as I said, we talk to early and often. Even now that they're out of session, we're having conversations in preparation, and that's a little different for me. Being, and Devon certainly was incredibly helpful, being a part of those early discussions just as soon as a bill is introduced. and getting into some of, and that kind of leads me to my other point, is just the language that we're speaking and making sure we're all speaking the same language as our legislators, because oftentimes we do not, and they mean one thing and we understand that meaning to be something different. And this is where Monica comes in, having community input on what that language means in each community, which is something that's new, but not new, and something that we assume happens, but doesn't happen. So that's been huge for me. The other part of this is actually, and Monica alluded to this, a part of the language is actually going out into the communities. We said we would go out and do listening sessions. Well, the pandemic shut that down fairly quickly. So this is our first opportunity, but quite a few of us, including myself, are getting on the road tomorrow to come visit Monica. And we're going to the Eastern Shore to make sure I understand what a CAFO is and what it is to be downwind of that. We're actually going to go and see that for the first time, which is going to be different. And we're taking some of the members of the commission and the other state agencies to make sure we're all kind of walking and singing from the same hymnal, for a lack of a better way to put that. One of the other things that we've done is advance our work with other, and Secretary Grumbles spoke to this, with other agencies. I'd never had the opportunity, and thanks to Devon, this year, I actually got to have a conversation with all of the MDOT administrators. It seems like a no-brainer, but it wasn't something that happened. So I literally got the full attention of the MDOT administrators for 30 to 40 minutes. And I got to speak to airport, highways, vehicles, all of that. And they're in the process of developing an EJ plan. And Devon and I have had that conversation with them as well. And it seems like it's something that should be happening and should have happened. But literally, we've kind of had a cacophony of events that kind of happened that forced us to not only work in this space, but work together in a different way and work smarter. So we're advancing all of those things in the same process, and at the same time of rebuilding and adding new commission members at the same time. So all of this is happening. So we have literally about 30 or 40 balls in the air, which is why I'm happy I have Secretary Grumbles and Devon and Lisa at MDE to kind of help keep all of this together. That kind of gives you an idea of where we're going and what we're doing.
Great. And Monica, those 4 priorities.
I'm so slow to unmute. Yes, well, I just concur with what has been said, but I think one of the biggest things for me is our ability to not only connect with the legislators, as was mentioned, because there is a huge learning curve, if you will. We're talking about the same thing, but we're speaking a completely different language. And it's easy to make assumptions about what we think we know about each other, but not necessarily. And I believe it's going to take a village in order to get this done. So we're connecting with our communities in person, which, as I said, we're the first ones on the list. So we're super excited about that. Connecting with so that we're showing that our commission is committed to going out to meet people where they are, to get a firsthand view as opposed to something we saw written on paper. And then a legislative approach is going to be needed. And so connecting with our legislators, sometimes we can only go so far. In our position as a commission, we make recommendations. We say, this is what we see needs to be done, and how can we filter this throughout the different areas and agencies throughout the state. But sometimes we have to go further. And so encouraging a legislative approach and being able to get our legislators as our, cheerleaders out there with their colleagues to say, hey, this is what's going on. And so what do you think about this? And what do you think we can do about it? So it's not so fragmented. I think the commission, the makeup of the commission had a very fragmented makeup before, but we're looking to make up for that fragmentation by including these different elements that are so necessary in order to get this done. It's not going to happen overnight, but certainly we have to fight to make sure that everyone has clean air and clean water. We should never prioritize profits or big industry or anything above the health and welfare of our citizens in our state.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. And Devon, in your answer, I would ask you if it's all right to focus in on the supporting enhanced public engagement and participation, because we've gotten several comments in the chat about, are the meetings open to the public? What's the best way for the public to have their voice heard from the commission? Are there, times of day that the commission could get live public input? And has COVID-19 and the advent of Zoom changed the way the commission is thinking about public input? And I know that is one of the priority areas for this year. So if you could talk more in detail about that supporting enhanced public engagement and participation piece in your answer, that would be great. I've gotten a lot of questions about it.
Okay, I'm going to try to knock them all out. Enhancing the membership and authority of the commission. You heard Secretary Grumbles say that I was empowered to work with the Senate work group on environmental justice to help them craft the legislation that ended up being Senate Bill 674, ended up passing and ended up revamping, what word do we use? Reworking the commission. The commission has been working, but we've reworked it and added work to it. Empowering state agencies to invest in long-term EJ strategies. You've heard all of the panelists talk about how the 5 state agencies, planning, health, transportation, commerce, housing, and environment, all have been working together. And we've included DNR as well to try to bring all of the agencies along so that when we shifting to prioritizing identification of the EJ communities, when we go to an EJ community, we will prioritize them in this way. Not only have we in the commission gone through the mapping and screening tools to endorse a hybrid approach in screening and mapping so that we can properly identify EJ communities. Then when we go to those EJ communities, we come to listen. They are outreach events that we intend to have. And we hear directly from those community members at that community about their issues. But to get to your question, Rebecca, one of the reasons why Secretary Grumbles appointed me as the EJ officer and also appointed me to staff the EJ Commission was to have that nexus between the two, so that when I act as the point person directly for community issues on environmental justice. If you go to our website and you go to the environmental justice page, I am the contact person. If you go to our website, there's a number of places where you'll find my name identified and my phone number and my email address identified as the contact person. If a community wants to talk to the commission or get issues before the commission, there are several easy ways to do it. Obviously, one is to attend the commission meeting. As the chair said, we meet every fourth Tuesday of the month. Another way to get your information, your voice to the commission is what I will do after I start speaking. And I'm going to type in devon.dodson1@maryland.gov. You email me directly. I will respond back to you. I am really, really good at email. I'm not so good on the phone, but I'm really, really good on email. I don't leave an email unanswered or unread. I'm looking at, of course, how's the commission working to educate community members? I think you heard both Secretary Grumbles, Camille, and Monica both talk about the fact that the commission is making outreach efforts to the community. Not only are we bringing the commission to the community, we also brought the community to the commission. So in 2 commission meetings, we had Monica bring her community and talk to us about the issues that we are going to see in Wacomico and Somerset. We also had the Brandywine community spend about an hour with us talking through their issues. And the Brandywine community is near and dear to my heart because I started these efforts for Secretary Grumbles back 4 years ago in negotiating, mediating a settlement with the Brandywine community on a gas power plant that had been permitted there. So yes, the commission meetings are public. We encourage the public to attend. Chairman Burke guarantees that there will be public participation time, public comment time at the end of every commission meeting. We will stay after to hear all of those public comments. And as both Secretary Grumbles and Monica alluded to, the membership of the commission is expanding. Now that was done by legislation, and it alters the amount, the number of appointees that the governor has versus the legislature, but it expands the entire commission and puts in place many community members to be added to the commission so that we're not missing a corner of the state.
And I'll just, I'll give a plug for folks. If you are, yes, email Devon, but call your legislator as well. Because I think what I'm hearing from the panel right now is that there is strong legislative support, and legislators are very open to hearing about these ideas right now. And the commission certainly has a role to play in educating legislators and to, informing legislation and the executive agenda. But you all, as Maryland residents, any Maryland resident on the phone can call their state representative and tell them, I care about environmental justice. There's you should be, watching the work of the commission, contributing to the work of the commission, and supporting environmental justice when it reaches, when these issues reach Annapolis. So I would encourage everybody to let their elected officials, because they work for you, to let them know that you care about environmental justice and that you want to see it prioritized in the legislature. So just giving everybody an ask there to help support the commission as well by letting your elected officials know that this is a top priority for you. And so I wanted to just ask about the federal government also has prioritized environmental justice in a number of different ways, including, we've talked about cumulative impacts, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, the Executive Order on Climate Change, and Justice 40 are big issues at the federal level and within the US EPA. And I'm wondering how the commission is working on these issues in the state of Maryland. And this is the last question that we've written. And so I encourage folks, I see a bunch of questions we'll try to get to, but keep them coming. Get your questions into the chat. So let's start with Camille. How is the commission working on the sort of the federal priorities in the state of Maryland?
One of the things that we first did is that I like the fact that there are no assumptions of knowledge, that we all yet again understand what we're talking about. So we have had extensive presentations by some of our federal counterparts on just the EJ tools and the mapping tools and terminology. Sometimes we get very bogged down in the ABC of it, especially for those of us that work for either local, state, or federal government. So we wanted to take a step back to just make sure we were all speaking the same language. And as Monica and Secretary Grumbles alluded to, the same thing, the same term does not mean the same thing in different jurisdictions. Rebecca, you and I speak about lead completely differently in Baltimore City than some of our rural counties. And we had to take that step back. So we spent quite a few meetings just talking about terminology and getting presentations from some of our federal counterparts. One of the other things that's been really amazing with this particular administration is having access. That's the other thing that I don't remember us having as much of before. And this is me, the citizen, not me, the government employee. It's just having access to our federal counterparts and being able to pick up the phone and say that we're a state commission and having them go, you're not just a state commission, this is important. We kind of need to walk the walk and talk the talk, and having them present several times on several different tools, not only to the commission, but across the state, and kind of having folk have that back and forth for me. The other, as Secretary Grumbles talked about, and I'm sure he'll talk about a little more, it's just the EJ plan and looking at what the federal EJ plan is and how we can either adapt that, change that, or move that, or do whatever we need to do to make it work for the state of Maryland. And I say again, it's working the legislators into that conversation, trying to have that conversation with them before or prior to new bills going into being enacted, and having them also, and this is the thing that no one enjoys, but thank God Devon understands better than most of us, is look at what we currently have as statute and not trying to reinvent the wheel. That is so huge. And I love our legislators and certainly want them to do their job, but don't want them to kind of double up on something, that the commission already has power to do, or that statute, MDE statute or COMAR has power to do as well. So this year for me, it's been spending more time kind of aligning ourselves, not only with the feds, but also separating ourselves on issues that we differ from them on, but also making sure that we have access to them as well. And I will defer to Secretary Grumbles or Devon to speak a little deeper.
And Monica, why don't we go to you next, taking the federal government priorities and how's the commission helping those get those implemented in Maryland?
So of course, with Title VI and everything, we're looking to ensure that we can really give justice where justice is necessary, especially as it relates to health disparities. For example, where we are on the shore, we have some real issues with respiratory diseases. We have, people with, problems with access to care, to be able to address some of the issues that they have. Well, when you're in a smaller community, people are not exactly as comfortable with speaking out to have a voice, and so having having someone to be able to speak that to our commission, so that our commission can come and see, well, what do we need to do to bring everyone on an equitable level, to get these issues addressed so that we are in compliance. We don't want big I's and little U's. We want to make sure that we are looking at cumulative impacts. We are really being honest about what is really happening on the ground, what is happening in communities, so that we and honestly, there are so many good things about the executive order, and this is, but there's some the good thing about the state being separate from the Fed, okay, is that we are in a position to go beyond where there are holes and gaps, because there are holes and gaps in this executive order, and especially as it relates to agriculture. So that's an encouragement, and the power that we have to be flexible, to be able to really fight on behalf of our state, and then where we do have issues with the state, perhaps there are some things where the federal part can be of service and as an umbrella. But if we can all get it worked out, how wonderful it would be, right?
Yeah. And I think that's an important point, right? The state can go further. So that's a great point. Devon.
So it obviously is one of my roles is to educate the commissioners, or in some cases, the commissioners educate me on the interplay between the feds and us. Certainly, Dr. Wilson has been encouraging us to have more discussions on the federal side as the new administration has come in. And, fortunately, I have a secretary who was plugged into EPA because he used to be there, and who very early on was able to have conversations with the Biden administration and talk about it prior to any of the announcements even coming out. He had already talked to Administrator Regan. And so I'm stepping on his toes by saying that. But what I do is take that information and bring it back to the commission and do what Monica just sort of alluded to. What, as a commission, what can you do? What is your statutory authority? what kind of other authority or wiggle room, if you will, have the feds just given you? And most importantly, I think, and Chairman Burke just alluded to this as well, are there resources attached to it? Are the feds are they giving us details without resources? And it's great to help us take the pyramid, the inverted pyramid, and narrow it with their help. But without the resources behind it, unfunded mandates aren't really that great. So I am hopeful, I'm very hopeful that this administration is actually going to put the resources in play. And now, and I know that the secretary can talk about those Justice 40 and those things, but making the good announcement in February is great. What happens in December once we really get down to work?
Yeah, and Secretary Grumbles, close us out on the question. And I would ask that you focus on climate change as well, because I know that you're the chair of the state's Climate Change Commission and there's an EJ role there. And Dr. Wilson in his opening remarks talked a lot about why do we have this work today? Because climate change. And so if you could talk a little bit about that too.
Thank you. So first of all, the Biden-Harris administration is laying out a holistic, comprehensive, whole of government approach, both to climate change and to environmental justice. And I am in my role as Secretary of the Environment, but also because of my role on the Climate Change Commission and the EJ Commission, I have been discussing with their EJ office and with the administrator himself what Maryland is doing and how we can be a model, but we need federal leadership. Marylanders should be so honored that the administrator, Michael Regan, chose Baltimore to be the place to visit and announce the $50 million through the American Rescue Plan Act for environmental justice. I accompanied him and Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen, and on behalf of Governor Hogan, who was delighted that the administrator would come to Baltimore to the Ashburton water filtration plant to emphasize the importance of fighting lead poison in the paint and in the water, and investing in infrastructure, and also make the national announcement about the funding for environmental justice. So we have important work to do to both learn from, but also inform the federal government on their Justice 40, how from states' perspectives, how do you define disadvantaged, how you define the direct and indirect benefits, and how do you use law, existing law, or recommend changes to existing law to tackle cumulative impacts and prioritization for water equity. And on climate, you're right, Rebecca. Climate justice, energy justice, climate justice, justice ensuring that people who are disadvantaged are not subjected to frequent flooding or sewage in their basements. From climate justice to the broader concept of environmental equity, we really need to work closely with the federal government and show leadership in Maryland. And it's it needs to be continually a bipartisan and collaborative effort. As Monica said, it takes a village. It takes people with open minds and open hearts to really correct some of the shortcomings of our existing programs and put greater emphasis on environmental equity.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to audience questions, which actually does. So we have about 15 minutes left. And one of the questions we got is about legislation that might be on the books. We talked about passing legislation that strengthened the commission, but is there a way to identify current legislation that falls short? And the example that was given was fugitive dust emissions, which has been identified as an issue for folks. but that perhaps the law and regulation could be stronger in that area. And there are probably others like it where there are laws on the books, but they're not fully protective. Perhaps they don't, there's could be more equity framing used. Is there a process to identify existing legislation that could be strengthened with an environmental justice framework?
One of the charges of the commission, one of the statutory charges of the commission is to review existing laws and policies that have an impact on environmental justice and to comment on those existing laws and policies. The commission usually does it as a part of the legislative process, as I think everyone else on the panel has identified. But certainly there is opportunity for other issues to be brought before the commission. And so the easiest way to do it is to identify the issues to me or to the chair. And then we will get the chair and the commission members will determine how they want to address those issues.
Great. So email the issues. If there's the issues you want to flag, if perhaps you know about a piece of legislation that isn't strong enough or could be strengthened, let's certainly let Devon and Camille know, and they can take it to the commission. Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say that for the Maryland Department of the Environment, we have a very important responsibility when it comes to clean air. Use the tools we have to help reduce emissions. This is one of the reasons why the state has been very aggressive on transportation electrification and using Clean Air Act and diesel emissions reductions and focusing on the clean ports initiatives. It's about environmental justice for those who may be breathing unhealthy air. And in the context of fugitive dust or types of emissions, it's important. And as we'll look in the field at different poultry houses, what practices are being deployed to reduce gaseous ammonia emissions? How do you use existing authorities and practices and incentives to reduce emissions and increase air quality as well as water quality? And that is definitely a discussion that the courts and the lawmakers are going to continue to be looking at. And as a regulator, we've are bound to follow the law and also find ways to continue to improve public health and work with communities and as well as the electeds and the citizens who live in those communities on ways to keep advancing environmental and public health.
Yeah, no, and we got some questions about funding for these initiatives, sort of, unfunded mandates being a problem, which came up earlier in conversation. And so someone asked about, are there recommendations for funding from this new, surge in federal government support? Are there ways to make sure that adequate funding goes to implement and enforce the environmental justice work that's on the books?
Hey, I can jump in quickly on that one and say that I'm very supportive of and excited about the federal government and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's decision to choose 6 specific environmental programs as pilots for the President's Justice 40 program, the Brownfields program, the hazardous waste CERCLA program, the lead paint, the poison or the lead poisons and drinking water program, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and the Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. At the state level, we are also we have revised our criteria, the points we score for potential projects and communities, to give points to help in the prioritization of state financial assistance, including longer payback periods when it's a loan to a community with drinking water or sewer or stormwater needs, if it's in a disadvantaged area, based on income and poverty levels or criteria. That we need more discussion on how you define disadvantaged, how each state defines it, how the federal government might define it for purposes of federal programs. And that will also help drive targeted funding at the federal level and at the state level. But we know we need to invest more to advance equity and environmental health in areas that sorely need it.
Hey, Rebecca, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that the commission is full of individuals. We all feel differently. We all don't sing the same tune. We have lots of robust, strong conversations constantly. We are always not in agreement with MDE and the other state agencies, and there's lots of room for that discussion. Lots of room for that discussion. I just want to be really clear. We also get a slate of bills mid-session, a little bit before session, and go through each of those bills. Some things we don't take a position on because we're lucky enough to have Devon and Secretary Grumbles kind of give us the ins and outs and what's about to and what could happen. Other things we do take a position on with our other commissions, and we write letters, yay, nay, oppose, or certainly give suggestions on what you can do to either make that bill better and or reach out to that community instead of writing a bill about a community that you have not talked to yet. So I kind of wanted to add that small piece.
Right. And that introducing legislation or talking about legislation, while it may not always result in the passage of a bill, can certainly result in other conversations and other assistance programs and other projects that can advance environmental justice. Legislation is one tool in the toolbox, but there's a lot of tools, right? And introducing legislation can be a great way to introduce conversation, and that can lead to other ways to improve conditions in communities. I want to ask a question. We have folks from all over the country attending, and I know there's someone from South Carolina who is giving kudos to what we're doing in Maryland, but also saying that the South typically gives, sort of ends up supporting polluting industry because they bring jobs. So this tension between labor and environmental justice, it's definitely been a conversation in the state of Maryland. And so how is that, what are the conversations about, green jobs, polluting industry, environmental justice? What's the conversation with labor, and how there's a specific question in there about sort of regional work on economic growth and job growth. So it's not just one state at it, but it can be a regional compact as well. But sort of, can you talk about, sort of a tension that exists between job growth and environmental justice?
Sure, I'll take it. No, I'll let the secretary take it.
Well, I'll keep it brief. Sometimes it truly is a false choice. It is a false choice. However, I think those of us who've been involved in environmental regulatory and policy over the years knows that sometimes there are different trade-offs. And a state regulator like at MDE, we don't get to choose favorites based on our preferences. It's based on what the law provides and how we can advance our goals. And I think one of the most important things to do as a regulator in working with communities is to lay out the public health information and the environmental benefits of cleaner businesses, cleaner industries. We do that using incentives and education and outreach. And I just say, lastly, one of the most important developments in the climate action that's been occurring and needs to continue to accelerate is to work with all parties on just transitions, so that as coal-fired power plants shut down, that the community, which may feel like they're losing a lot of high-quality jobs, or the county losing an important tax base, can be focused on a clean and just transition. And I think that's a really important area for legislators and policymakers to be looking at financial incentives and job training for clean energy and for greater equity and healthier communities. And that's a really important area of the discussion that needs to continue to grow.
And it's really important to remember that the department can only do so much, that land use and zoning decisions are made at the local level. Let me say that again. Land use and zoning decisions are made at the local level. And when Secretary Grumbles talks about the law, that is oftentimes the law that our agency must follow. What did the local jurisdiction approve? And then we can take it from there.
And just even to add to that, I think for us, when you have a smaller community where you may have a certain group of businesses that may provide a certain number of jobs, and you end up with kind of a 6 degree of separation where you have, everyone knows somebody who works in this particular area. That issue comes up a lot. One of the benefits in connecting the rural, or should I say the local community, to a broader space in the state is being able to remind everyone that it's very important to hold our areas accountable, no matter what type of jobs they bring, and educating the community as to ways that we can change things around to cause businesses to decrease pollution, or make water safer, or stop runoff, or stormwater management, whatever the case may be. And as he said, planning and zoning for us a lot of times is like our nightmare, our local nightmare, our nemesis, if you will. We encourage our communities to get to know how the laws work, so that we have a clear understanding of which ones apply locally and what ways that we can be of help throughout the state.
And I would just give a plug to, have more health representation on the zoning boards, because I think as a health person, it's like health input early in the process could be really helpful in deciding sort of where industry goes related to people, and also understanding the true cost. There's a report came out very recently, May of this year, that did some hard work on calculating the health costs from climate change and fossil fuel pollution. And it's $820 billion a year for the health costs of polluting industry. And we just don't always take the true cost of providing industry bringing jobs to a community that could harm people on the back end. It is introduced job, and I'm of course speaking for myself and when I give these the spiel, but we know the cost of inaction on climate change, and we know we're truly better understanding the health cost of polluting industry. And that has to be part of the calculus in that zoning, in that land use and zoning process, so that we know what the cost to individuals is, what the cost to quality of life is, and what the cost to government is. Healthcare is one of those, it's the biggest part of the budget, and it's just why, if we can prevent some of that cost in the types of jobs and the types of land use, that really needs to be part of the calculus. So I know this is a conference full of soapboxes, and so that was mine for today. And as we wrap up, I just want to give everybody a chance to have a closing remark and really look to 20. We talked a lot about legislation, looking towards 2022. What are the issues what are the environmental justice issues people should have top of mind that they can weigh in on in 2022? What's going to be helpful to the commission? So I'm going to give everybody a chance for closing remarks before we end and everybody takes a lunch break. So Camille, I'm just going to go across my screen here. So Camille, you first.
For me, it's always just communication and staying in one's lane. The commission can't be all things to all people. And I understand that because like you, Rebecca, I work in public health, knowing that we are all approachable, including Secretary Grumbles. I mean, I happily will call or text or ask a specific issue. If I can't get Devon, I certainly will approach him. I've had community members come up to me in the supermarket and ask a question that I've taken to both of them about a specific community issue and join us. We desperately need and want people to join us, and we need to hear that voice. The legislators are there and they're in place, and they want and need your help, and even if they don't, give it to them. I'm very clear about that. So it's all about communication for me. And I'm looking forward to continuing our travels all over the state and taking our, and also inspiring and hopefully shaming other agencies into joining us on the road if I can. Because sometimes you have to do things by shame, and I'm okay with that. So
a little guilt goes a long way,
Absolutely. So I want folk to join us.
And Devon.
Legislation, things coming up in 2022. I think I will answer the question by saying this. Evan Isaacson put in the chat a question that we were going back and forth about a broad and hypothetical question that he had, whether or not the commission or department would support legislation that would give greater authority to the commission. I think we weighed in on that on Senate Bill 674 last legislative session. This question specifically relates to funding. Of course, the commission has no funding directly tied to it via statute. So if there was a bill out there that gave the commission money, depending on where that money came from, I'm sure it would be something we would like to take a look at. But that's broadly, that's part of what the commission was charged to do. The commission was charged to not only retroactively look at bills that are being brought to it, but proactively think of issues that might help strengthen environmental justice and sustainable communities in the state. And that is, as we've reworked ourselves, is something that will definitely be a priority of the next group of commission, the next commission. What I have to remind everyone is by the virtue of that statute that passed means that we get an entire new commission. Now, I eagerly anticipate that many of the current members will be reappointed, but it's going to be an entirely new commission. And so that is, rather than, and this is something that Secretary Grumbles and I have talked about, we don't want to lose momentum. So we've got to hit the ground running as soon as those new appointees are in, and hopefully before the legislative session starts in January.
Great. Monica?
I'm just wanting to hear more voices, more input, more pressure, and being consistent. We have an opportunity to get this information out to our various entities, and in even areas where people have said, well, that's not my problem. They might not have said it out loud, but what does that have to do with me? Why is that my issue? And so we're showing just the interconnectedness. I think that's a priority, showing the interconnectedness of not just throughout the state, but through the various agencies. This is a priority. Everybody has to breathe. If you're not breathing, something's wrong with you, right? You're not gonna make it. Everyone needs, clean water, and we want to have a healthy environment. We want to protect the health and welfare of individuals, and that should not be prioritize according to where you come from, where you live, how much money you have, what you look like. We are looking for equitable treatment and fairness, and that's, for me, that's my goal. And truly treating everyone equally in responsibility for what we put out into the atmosphere, no matter what our position is. So whether we can do some of that legislatively or whatever, but right now for me, my focus is ensuring that these different entities get the information and that they hear from the communities and encourage everyone. Yes, attend these meetings, bring, write letters, bring your issues in so people can't say, oh, I didn't know, right? And so we can build upon that.
That's great. Yeah, I didn't know is no longer an excuse for anybody. That's
Right.
Yeah. Secretary Grumbles, close us out.
Just to simply say, my strong desire and hope is that the commission continues to grow in importance and stature. I've seen over the last 3 or 4 years how it has changed dramatically and is more robust. It's going to grow in 2021 with the changes in the size and of the commission. And I think it's so important to have an independent commission, listen and learn and lead on this matter. And that means robust discussion, but it's so important for health and equity and civility to make real progress. So that's my, I think there's some really positive signs in how the commission is improving and adds more value. So I'm hoping that 2022 will be more of that, accelerated and strengthened. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Camille, Devon, Monica, Ben. So appreciate the work, the ongoing work of the commission, the work of the department. Thanks for spending time with us today. Thank you to all of you for tuning in and for your questions. Really made for a robust discussion, and it's the opening of many more discussions. So be in touch with the commission. Clearly we heard today they want to hear from you. So let's, call your legislator, be active in this process and apply pressure when necessary. So, take your lunch break, tune back in at 1 o'clock on the Whova app, and tune in to lots more discussion throughout the next couple of days. Thanks to Dr. Wilson and team for hosting this annual convening. Really appreciate all of you. Enjoy lunch and see you at the next sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.